Jai Gurudev. Today we will be reading book Problems of Today, Solution for Tomorrow, written by Pandit Shriram Sharma Acharya. A maniac let loose on the thoroughfare may create havoc amongst the passers-by and injure many seriously. It is done quite effortlessly, but on the other hand, is it possible to restore the damage easily? Modern generation has been living in the mania of two mistaken beliefs. First, the scientific development have made man omnipotent, and second, that instant gain is all that matters. In this utopia, man has totally lost balance of judgment. With scientific achievements, he has become so much power drunk that he has stopped thinking about consequences of his impetuous actions. Under the existing circumstances, irresponsible individuals keep on repenting for the outcome of their thoughtless misdeeds. World is facing similar crisis today, with a peculiar mania man has begun to destroy systematically that very things on which his survival depends. Survival of human race is in danger. One has to pay a heavy price for the cruel jokes and playing with the nature. The numerous problems and crises in the society have arisen because of the man's own irresponsible and wrong actions. In other words, we may call this exercise in futility. However, it is the responsibility of mankind itself to correct the wrong. There is no other option. No doubt, many innovations will be needed for ushering in a prosperous future in the next century. But the causes responsible for the present day problems will have to be reviewed to understand whether remedial measures were adequate. This much of analysis would itself be sufficient to resolve the problem to a great extent. To begin with, let us consider production. More or less 50% of population of the world today is hardly contributing anything to development of resources. An average human being spends almost his entire life in just looking after his domestic requirements. He neither makes economic or intellectual contribution to the society expected from a healthy human being. His contributions to numerous problems of the society beyond his home are minimal. He finds himself a mute witness to the problems of uneducation, poverty, and regression around himself. In the developed nations, women are playing a leading role in developmental activities of their homeland. If women are allowed to develop and systematize their God gifted capabilities, they can effortlessly increase expertise, production, and productivity of their homeland manifolds. It would be difficult otherwise. Another big problem facing the world today is unwarranted growth in population. Just 2000 years ago, the population of the world was about 30 crores, which is 300 millions. Today, it is increased to 600 crores, which is 6,000 millions. That is about 20 times. The proportion of land which was then available to one man has now to be shared by 20. The process has, however, not come to an end. It is continuous in geometrical progression and gradually heading towards total ecological imbalance and disaster. If human lust could be restrained, procreation would automatically be constrained. Then, at some later stage, we may hope for decline of population growth, which would inevitably help in alleviating many problems easily. These days, the tendency of thoughtless extravagance has crossed all limits of decency. It is well known that enough time and money is being squandered in consumption of liquors and drugs, showmanship, personal ornamentation, and in making expensive arrangements for matrimonial functions. Indecent makeups and wearing vulgar garments by women encourage lustful reactions. Besides, it paves the way of sexual perversions. Exhibitionism, dowry, and overemphasis on ornaments in matrimonial functions are totally destroying the economic structure of the society. Does it need a very high level of competence to get rid of these evils? Why should anyone find it difficult to avoid such undesirable elements? Is it difficult, burdensome, or impossible to follow the dictum of simple living and high thinking? Just this much will be sufficient to reduce the suffering due to poverty to half. If one keeps control on the unrestrained arrogance of exhibiting affluence, there would hardly remain any trace of competition in the society to become a millionaire. Does following the lifestyle of an average citizen belittle anyone in the society? On the contrary, he gets the credit of being more idealist, happy, contained, disciplined, and liberal. If the expenditure on assuming the so called high status in the society could be curtailed by following a modest style of living, enough will be saved for the downtrodden and they will be liberated from their forced mercy and helplessness. In this content, let us look at the structure of the armed forces, where all personnel of a same rank are provided identical facilities. Equality is, in fact, an ingredient of modesty. Communities of saints and ascetics follow an established code of living. Any departure from this code is always looked down upon. It is true that the status of kings and their ministers in the bygone days was recognized by the exhibition of their riches. For the modern society, this concept has become obsolete. Today, anyone emulating a king or a lord of yester years could be looked down upon as a foolish impostor. Communistic, socialistic concepts have now taken roots in the psyche of the masses, who regards the abnormally rich as thugs and cheats and keep on occurring them with the numerous improprieties. Extravagance can definitely be stopped and the savings therefrom utilized for raising the living standards of millions. This is the only way to level the incongruities of the society for erection of framework of social upliftment. Affluence, when utilized for objective other than arrogant exhibitionism, produce better results. Property of family inheritance in the economic structure should be limited to make provision for living for the helpless. It could also be justified as business inheritance. However, there is absolutely no justification in augmenting the assets of the earning members of the family by handling them over the savings of ancestors. It is very difficult to establish the creditability of lawmakers and merits of those who were supposed to have benefited from these laws. Nevertheless, natural justice demands that irrespective of the so called rights of the earners, money has to be utilized where it is needed most. When such reforms are undertaken, many of the crises facing this world will be resolved without any special efforts. Chapter 2. Wisdom is as important as education. Some problems of the society needs immediate solution. Only a minimal requirement of education is fulfilled through the medium of existing education institutions. In a nutshell, such literacy serves limited objectives such as reading, writing, and accounting. Modern education lays somewhat excessive emphasis on subjects which are hardly of any use in practical life. History, geography, geometry, and numerous such subjects are rarely of any help in day to day living. Nevertheless, in the prevalent system to call one self educated, one must acquire a school certificate of a degree which is generally worth nothing more than a scrap of paper. The so called educated unemployed face many problems and in turn create problems for others. They consider manual labor below their dignity. Besides, they are also not used to manual work. In this context, uneducated face fewer problems. The importance of education, however, can never be overemphasized. Wisdom, that is Vidya, on the other hand, gives one true knowledge, that is Gnan. An unenlightened person is akin to a blind man. Wisdom is the biggest treasure one may aspire to acquire. It is believed to be the source of nectar, which is Amrit. However, the benefit accrue only when one attempts to utilize wisdom for discretion in actions and development of virtue, character, and personality to make the best use of one's talents commensurate with cultural needs. Otherwise, corrupt thinking and immortal action make one more undesirable in the society and he becomes a wise devil, that is Brahmaraksha. A review of present system of education is very much needed. We must find out whether the present day education is making any contribution to the development of personality and talent, structuring of the framework of civilized behavior, or it is a meaningless exercise. It is to be kept in mind that the aforementioned attributes are the foundation stones of development of human personality and in turn of prosperity of society and the nation. In the absence of virtue worthy of human dignity, an individual with a bare higher education begins to behave with arrogant irresponsibility and may become a greater liability to the society than an uneducated person. One may acquire evil traits capable of harming anyone in every possible way. We should therefore fully appreciate the creative and destructive aspect of education. The elites of the world have always used education as the prime tool for shaping their society to enthuse their countrymen for bringing in desired change in thoughts, character, and behavioral pattern of the common man. In this country, absence of such education is ubiquitous and too glaring. Under the existing circumstances, however, there is a little hope that the policymakers and organization of educational system could be pursued to bring about any major changes. For alleviating this situation, therefore, only one option is left. The thinkers and the philosophers of the country should come forward to fill in this void and take necessary reformative measures with the help of responsible citizens. The ancient education system was formulated with a wider perspective. Its objective was not only to provide knowledge about means of livelihood and their proper utilization, but at the same time, it helped in bringing about a total change in the thoughts and action of the man in the field of natural resource management and human behavior. In other words, it provided an awakening, awareness, discretion, or prudence. Addiction to any type of drug makes a person semi conscious. In a state of intoxication, although physical sense of a person behave normally, one is incapable of exercising one's prudence. In the stupor, one becomes obvious to the norms of civilities and cultural behavior. A crude, unpolished man belongs to this class. Such an individual does not know how to think according to the human dignity, maintain appropriate level of character, and incorporate sufficient modesty in his behavior. He keeps on repeating irresponsible, thoughtless actions as if he is partially awakened or intoxicated. On ignoring human dignity, a man is reduced to the status of a humanoid animal, narpashu, or an ape. Humanity begins with culture and civilized behavior. Everyone, therefore, must develop an awareness of virtue, action, character, and disposition worthy of the cultured individual. Otherwise, one is bound to remain in the state of culture, infancy, and ignominy. Not only doors to progress remain closed for such an individual, his idea and action continues to be ridiculed in the developed society. We must keep in mind that this is the age of materialism. The present day man considers himself to be only a body assembled with physical sense and mind. Consequently, all his desire, aspiration, and actions are confined to his physical body. Deliberation, studies, and actions are thus related to the small confines of body only. For a common man, any thought or action pertaining to the soul are irrelevant. This is, in fact, the domain of wisdom, which is Vidya. Its various facets of culture and morality influence and develop body and mind of the individual respectively. So far, this field of human development has remained neglected. This is because man has failed to understand the importance and the necessity of this aspect of life. Education, as it is understood today, barely serves the objective of teaching social behavior, managing livelihood, and acquiring comforts and necessities. Just this much is not enough for a dignified living, and in an absence of virtue, imbibing civility and modesty, the emotional level of an individual remains same as that of an animal. To make every human being wise and fill every mind with wisdom, a detailed plan should be formulated which should fill a void in the present institutional education. For implementing this plan, time, industry and emotional involvement of thinkers and warm-hearted person will be required in a measure equivalent to that being provided by government and private institutions which impart education to fulfill physical and material needs. The time is ripe for implementing such scheme far and wide with full enthusiasm and large-scale coordination. End of part 1. Jai Gurudev.